Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Right Place, Right Time, a not too woo woo podcast where I unpack plot twists and curveballs that Mama Uni has thrown at me for character development. My name is Betty, your host, and we made it to episode 6. I'm naming this episode Slowly Finding My Way Back to Myself because I think growing up with anxiety and depression mixed with like low self esteem and low confidence really can shift and affect who you show up as on a day to day basis. And I realized that isn't the truest version of myself, even though I thought that was who I was going to be for the rest of my life at some point. I see now, after going through my healing journey and putting myself in therapy, that that isn't the case. Obviously, growing up, I didn't understand what depression or anxiety was, so I didn't know how to label it. And it wasn't until I went to therapy in my early 20s that I realized a lot of that played such a big role and therefore affected my thoughts and how I moved in life and how I showed up for people, how I showed up for myself. Now I am at a place where I remember the version of myself that didn't have that depression or anxiety, or it wasn't as heightened as it was at some point. And it kind of ties into like tapping into your inner child. That's the version of you that is the truest version of yourself. It takes a minute to get back to ourselves and to get back to our core, but it is possible, even if you have depression or anxiety or deal with anything else related to mental health. Obviously, as a natural empath, I'm always going to feel heavier emotions. And I think other empaths can agree with that. But you couple that with depression and the feeling of like hopelessness, and it really can take a toll on your energy, on obviously your mental health, and how like joyful you feel on a day-to-day basis. I know for me personally, I've allowed it to affect a lot of my relationships because I didn't have the necessary tools in my metaphorical toolbox to navigate how I felt, and I didn't really know how to express it or articulate it. I've always been someone who's been drawn to psychology and just learning more about the mind and how it works. Vulnerabilities, triggers, traumas, all of that, how they play a big role on our day-to-day basis. And believe it or not, like a lot of the way that we show up and our projections are due to behaviors that we learned as children that manifest now as we're older into our adulthood. We have so much access to self-improvement books and podcasts and journaling, meditating, all of that stuff. And I think there's just like a big momentum around mental health in general. And I love that for the younger generations. But I think growing up, it was a little bit taboo still, even for my generation. We weren't really open about it. We didn't know what it was. A lot of the times I would hear like it's all in your head, or there's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to be sad over. And I think that also made me feel very insecure because I didn't know why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And then being told that it was maybe just in my head or there was nothing really wrong or going on, it just made me feel like I was an outcast and a black sheep. And why did I feel this way and no one else can see it and no one else felt it? And so I internalized that, and it made me a little bit more bitter, a little bit more angry, a little bit more frustrated, and definitely triggered my anxiety and my depression a little bit more. Even me talking about this right now feels a little bit uncomfortable because it has been a part of me for so many years, and only my true inner circle knows what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. All for sharing this version of myself to hopefully connect with some people and share my story. I'm also just a really big introvert, hermit, observer, if you will. I love being behind the scenes and watching everything happen around me. I think that's also like an empath quality, maybe, because I think we absorb energy, so we don't really put ourselves in the mix. We're kind of like outside, observing from outside in. But because my anxiety and depression manifested so much and I felt so insecure about it, I slowly started to kind of mask it with being a social butterfly, and I would put myself in the mix, and I kind of distracted myself, distracted others, because I didn't want people to see what I was going through. I had a lot of social anxiety, especially in high school. I think that's where I really felt it the most. Felt like I was in this like fishbowl and everybody was like watching me and staring at me, and I would sweat. I did affect how I showed up even in school. I, again, barely graduated. I talked about it a little bit in one of the episodes, but I did not love going to school. I didn't love being in social settings. I always wanted to go home. I never wanted to be out. And honestly, thinking about that version of myself, it kind of makes me sad. And I still deal with social anxiety now, but not to that extent. I think when I do feel it creeping in, I'm able to pull the tools out of my toolbox and help myself navigate it. So, for example, if I am feeling a little bit of social anxiety now when I'm out, I am able to label it, whereas before I didn't know what was going on in my body. But typically your body will respond before your mind does. So like if you start to feel your heart palpitating quickly, or you start sweating, or whatever your body does to tell you that you're under anxiety, and that's what you need to pay attention to. And I learned that through therapy. Like my therapist really had me sit and take note of what my body was doing when I was under pressure, when I was under these circumstances. I know I go sometimes to my family's house, and I all of a sudden start to feel anxious, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm starting to sweat, which then causes more anxiety. And so what I do is I remove myself from the situation. I take myself outside and I just take a deep breath. But it is still really awkward, I would say, because no, you can't really like tell people in that moment, like I'm going through a social anxiety episode, so I need to step out, because people are like, why? What? There's nothing wrong. It's still kind of a taboo topic, because not a lot of people either relate to it or understand it or know about it. And it's so interesting because everyone I meet thinks I'm this like social butterfly and so bubbly and an extrovert. And I always think that's so interesting, because the disconnect, right, of how I feel inside and how I'm perceived on the outside. But again, it was kind of like a coping tactic for me to be more like talkative and social, so that I can mask the anxiety that I was feeling. And no one told me to do that, obviously. Like that was just me wanting to be normal, quote unquote. I think why I am perceived differently than how I feel internally is because I do show up more resilient, and I have this tenacious spirit that I won't let, just because I have social anxiety, I won't let myself not be in a social setting, even though sometimes I think it would have been okay to, omit myself from a social situation. But I am determined to kind of move past my anxiety. And so I do it anyway. Really, what was the turning point for me was during college when I had to be a waitress and then bartend. Like that required me to basically put myself in a fishbowl, because everyone's around you and you're the one in the center making the drinks and taking the orders and entertaining and making small talk. And so that was really the pivotal moment for me that helped me overcome a lot of my social anxiety triggers, and I was able to get out of my own head, get out of my own way, actually learn how to do small talk and carry conversation, and just be more extroverted, I guess, in that sense. So I'm forever grateful for that. Obviously, I would have loved to not have had to work during college, but everything happens for a reason, and I truly believe that. And so I would never change anything from my past. And I think me being put in a position to bartend was so that I can truly get out of my shell and find my way back to myself. Because I do remember there was a part of me when I was younger where I had a lot of friends and I was super social, and like I would run up and down the neighborhood and just go to different friends' houses, and I loved like activities and things. And then I started slowly losing that confidence and that like spirited version of myself. And then most recently, what really kicked my self esteem into high gear and helped me find my confidence again was content creation. Like, I have always been in the industry, I've always loved capturing content and being more active on social media. But I will say, content creation is such a different beast that I had to get out of my own way. I had to not be shy. I had to not have anxiety. You have to reprogram how you think and not care about how you're perceived. Truthfully, what I always say to people around me and to myself is that you can't please everyone. You're not everyone's cup of tea. You will find your circle just showing up as who you are. I started creating content for fun, and somewhere along the way, it helped me reconnect with myself and find my way back to myself. I do worry less and less about how people perceive me because I've gained trust with myself that I show up as my truest and most authentic version of myself. No matter what I post, it's always going to be who I am to my core. I do think that's just poetic in general for myself because somewhere along the line, I was led into social media marketing as a career. And then obviously it opened a door for me to create content. I've always had this like more creative nature to myself. And I also think tapping into creative hobbies been a little bit more meditative and just grounded overall. For example, reading was never something I enjoyed growing up. I was a slow reader. I hated when the teachers picked on me. I did not want to read the sentence in the paragraph. I felt like the words were scrambled. But when I got older, I started reading self-improvement books because I was in this kind of healing journey. I thought to myself, if I enjoy that, maybe I'll enjoy fiction as well. So I started reading fiction, and then I have read so many books now where I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I love that about myself because I was never a big reader and now I love to read. Or I started macrameing or just do little one-off projects. I learned how to sew, just things like that, where I think in general, having creativity is a good outlet if you are an anxious person or have depression. I also just want to shout out the people in my life who have always seen me for who I really am and kind of just like pulled me out of my funks and my, lowest places. Because there's so many moments where you go through self-doubt and you don't really believe that you have the capacity to overcome what you're going through. So it's so important to have a solid support system who is there with your best interests in mind and wants to see you succeed and persevere. And truly, I'll never take that for granted. Like, I know I surround myself with people that are very much strong and grounded, and I do that for a reason because some days I need the support. But all to say, too, that there are moments where I still revert to my low self-esteem version of myself, and which is why I started this whole podcast, and my whole theme is blossoming into self-belief because I want to come back to that version of myself where I did believe in myself and I did feel super confident in my own skin, and I feel like I'm pretty much there now, but I do still feel like there's like this hint that is like still holding me back. And I just want to like push past those barriers and free myself from the self-doubt that I've dealt with for so many years, like honestly, 2 decades at this point. This is my vow to myself and to you guys that I will no longer hold myself back as showing up as the most truest and authentic version of myself and just allowing myself to really blossom into self-belief and hopefully inspire you guys too to do the same. I want to take inventory of all of the growth that I've had. I want to encourage you guys to do the same because it takes a lot to get out of that mentality. Like, again, I think when I first meet people, people think like, oh my gosh, Betty's like so fun and, bubbly and this and that. But they don't see the version of me that I've had to put so much work into myself and into overcoming a lot of the mental stuff that I've gone through to get to where I am. And so I think it's so important to open up about it and talk about it, because we all have to start somewhere, and it is possible to overcome all of that, but you have to put in the work. No matter what, you have to start somewhere. And I'm, again, such a big advocate of therapy. I don't think that's the only way to heal, but personally for me, that's the route that I took. And I'm grateful for my young self, because no one told me to go. I just put myself in it because I knew what route I could go down, and I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to overcome whatever it is that I needed to overcome to come out of it a better version of myself and find my way back to myself again. I have so many dreams and aspirations and goals, but I also need to take care of my mental health. And I know that. I know that I can't just be normal, quote unquote, because I have still a lot of residual stuff that I deal with. Make that force me to have slower days or slower moments. Every day could be different, every hour could be different. And so I am very conscious of that, and I'm very graceful to myself through those moments, because they come in waves and I don't ever know how long they're going to be here for, or how impactful they're going to be, but I do know that I will get through it. And I love speaking in metaphors, so I always use my garden or tending to my garden as a metaphor for these types of situations. And it's so important for me to water these seeds that I've planted and continue to take care of them and take those weeds out whenever they start to come in. And that's essentially what I do when I start to feel like a depressive episode come in or have anxiety. I love breath work. I love grounding with my senses. Like, it's something my therapist taught me, was to tap into your five senses anytime you start to feel anxious and you don't have control over your thoughts. The goal is to basically acknowledge, like, what do you smell, what do you taste, what do you see, what do you hear, what do you smell, and that helps get you back to your present self, and that grounds you in the moment. I've talked about this a lot, but if I'm feeling like I'm in a rut or a depressive episode is coming on, I will hop in the shower. That literally will do it every single time. Like, it doesn't even have to be a full shower. You don't even have to use soap. It's just get yourself, like, shock yourself with water, and it's guaranteed to make you feel better. Put on a little cute outfit or just a sweatsuit, go outside, have a conversation with someone. That usually does the trick for me. Working out is a huge one. I work out mostly for my mental health. Obviously, physical is great. The release that I get from working out helps my mental health so much, and I'll never not work out for that reason. Like, any day I don't want to, I always tell myself, like, you'll feel better after you work out, and 10 out of 10 times that is the case. I used to think that people who were confident were just naturally gifted with confidence, and I always had this kind of like admiration towards it, and I always wanted that for myself. But now I realize that blossoming into self-belief means showing up every day. It means believing in yourself. It means building that trust with yourself. It means resting. It means not abandoning yourself or your goals or the things that you want in life. And that's really where confidence comes through. For me, every time I want to throw in the towel, I'm just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to continue down our path. We're going to put one foot in front of the other. And truthfully, it is sometimes that way. Like, you really just have to put one foot in front of the other and not think about the future, not think about the outcomes. Just think about the moment and how you're going to get through it. And it's quite literally just doing one step at a time. Or deal with it right now. You are not alone, and it always will pass. That's something that I tell myself every time. just build yourself a foundation, build yourself your metaphorical toolbox, and continue to persevere. For example, I was just on a trip and something happened where I easily could have let it just ruin my day and just want to throw in the towel and go home and call it a day. But instead, I was like, no, I mean, yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's not ideal, but I can get through it. And I did. I figured out a solution and the day carried on and everything was fine. But I think, 15 years ago, I would have let that completely overrun my mood and my emotions and my day. And so I was really proud of how I handled that. And honestly, I even used humor through it. I think that's been a coping mechanism of mine for a really long time. Not in like an avoidant way, but I do think that sometimes things happen and you're like, you kind of just have to laugh about it instead of letting it consume you and ruin your day, because some moments are laughable. Like, obviously, not all of them, but some moments you're like, yeah, that's such a crazy, shitty situation, but like, seriously, and like, just laugh about it. Gonna be times where you do need to retreat and go home and just call it a day. And sometimes I do that too, where I'm like, you know what, we'll try again tomorrow. Like, today's not my day. Clearly, things just keep kind of happening. I will just surrender and I will try again tomorrow, but I won't let it ruin my mood or make me doubt myself or spiral into a low self-esteem mentality. I just let it be and then I continue the next day and try again. I want to end this episode by telling you guys how I personally sought out a therapist and like the process that I went through, because I think a lot of people either don't know how to get started or don't really understand. And now, I mean, there's so many resources, there's so many online resources that you can tap into. But for me personally, I want to share how I went about it so that hopefully, if you guys are interested and want to explore that option, you can. I went through the insurance portal and I researched all of the available therapists in my area who were accepting new patients, because sometimes they're not. I wanted a female therapist at the time. I've had both, but at the time I wanted a female. I met her, and obviously, like, you're not instantly going to click with your therapist the first time or at all. And so you can continue searching for a new one. For me, I clicked with her right away, which was honestly such a blessing because we were together for like almost 10 years and she just knew how to talk with me and I really resonated with her style. So that was a very easy and natural fit. But I've heard that it's not always the case. So definitely don't be discouraged. My time frame of being in therapy was about 10 years in total. I think with her it was about 8. I started going to her weekly in the beginning and that lasted for a few months, maybe a year, because I really needed that at that time. And then we kind of spread it out and it became like bi-weekly and then maybe once a month and then we would take like a break. So I think therapy is there as a tool. It's not going to be a constant and it shouldn't really be a constant. I think there's moments where you gain the knowledge, you gain your tools, and then you go and apply them. Like for me, I would always lean on her anytime I felt like I was not in control of my emotions. I would probably still be seeing her, but she took a different route with her career. And I will never forget this, but our last conversation, she was like, I know you got this. You're good. You've done the work and you can basically spread your wings now. And I don't know, that gave me a lot of confidence too, to feel like someone was cheering me on and believed in me. And so since then, I have had one other therapist that I've gone to. They've made such a big impact in my life, and I always appreciate the people who have supported me through this journey, who have stuck by me, who have understood me. I'm grateful for myself for doing the work and putting myself in therapy and carrying through and reading self-improvement books and working out and doing so many things to support my mental health and be and show up as the best version of myself. So, cheers to finding our way back to ourselves, because we deserve that. Our inner child deserves that. And I can't wait what more I can discover about myself in the next few years, in the next decade. And I'll continue to put my best foot forward. I will continue to work on my mental health, and I will continue to advocate for mental health, and will continue to be there for people who also need a hand. So if you guys ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am more than happy to be a soundboard or a guiding light or anything that you need, because I really wish I had that when I first started. I just figured it out on my own, and I'm grateful for that. I will put some links below on how you can find a therapist. I will also add some of my favorite self-improvement books and podcasts so that you also can check those out. But thank you so much, you guys, for coming on this journey with me. And for those who have stuck around, who have joined, who are here, I love you guys so much. Let's blossom into self-belief. Let's find our way back to ourselves. Right place, right time. I'll see you on the next episode.